We go. Okay, Mavericks, welcome to our Wednesday morning webinar, and this is going to be a really good webinar. If you're a listing agent and you know that I preach listings are the name of the game, the old cliche, it is so true, listings are totally the name of the game, then the other side to being a rock star lister, the other side to having the perfect listing presentation is to be able to sell those things, Well, basically there's two components to selling them. You got to get a buyer who's interested in buying, and then you got to get your sellers into the realm of reality. I call it getting your sellers into the realm of reality. So that's what we're going to talk about today, how to get your sellers to accept offers they should, because that is one of the biggest downfalls listing agents have. I see some rock star listing agents all through Phoenix. They have signs everywhere, but they're just playing a numbers game. It's just a numbers game. They're just listing as many properties as they can, sitting back, letting things go, and what sells, sells, and what doesn't. I'm going to tell you, they are leaving so much money on the table. It's ridiculous. I mean, they are leaving, and they're hurting their brand. They're hurting their reputation with all those signs of failure. They think those for sale signs sitting out there month after month after month, they think that those are signs of success. Actually, they're signs of failure. A for sale sign that goes up, and then you see a sold sign on it a week later, 3 weeks later, a month later, even 45 days later. That's a sign of success. A for sale sign that sits week after week, month after month, there's no way that's anything but a great big black eye to the listing agent. And that is where you don't want to go. When I built my brand in the low to mid price market, one of the number one things that I loved doing was putting sold signs on properties. I recognized what sold signs meant. I recognized the power of other people in the neighborhood seeing that I had just sold a property. Same thing when I built my brand in Paradise Valley in the high-end area. I mean, putting a sold sign up was everything, absolutely everything. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is not how to list properties, but how to get properties sold. Here's the cool thing about it. This is what you're going to love. Talking about how to sell properties is also talking about how to list properties, because when you're really successful at selling properties, getting sellers to see the light, getting sellers to be realistic, getting sellers to take the offers they should, then what happens? You have a successful result, and people like to list with people who they see selling homes. So you can, number one, use those sales in your marketing. Number two, you're going to get referrals from the sellers. And number three, it's just visually going to be obvious out there that you're selling homes because of the sold signs. That's how important this webinar is. Not even a long webinar today. It's probably be 20, 25 minutes once I get into the content, but it's really, I hope, going to open your eyes into how I have been able, once I learned it, it took months and years to refine it and learn it. Like everybody else in the beginning, I didn't have magic dust. I've just been doing this a long time. And once I learned how to get my sellers to be realistic, I was able to sell most every single listing, even in not that good a market, able to sell virtually every single listing I took. So here we go. So first of all, I want you to think about, we're going to say six concepts, 6 words. First of all, with respect to sellers, my goal with my sellers, and this is an overview, then I'm going to give you some specific techniques, but I want to show you the goals. Here's what I was trying to accomplish, and then I'm going to tell you how I accomplished it. So first, knowledge. I wanted my sellers to have knowledge. Now, the knowledge that you think I wanted my sellers to have isn't what you may think. I wasn't as interested in sold comps as I was in what the competition was. In my view, buyers buy based on what's in the market right now. And they'll make choices to either buy your listing or not based on not what's sold, but based on what's available. Buyer wants a home, they're going to buy from among the existing inventory. So it was important that my sellers had knowledge and that I had knowledge I was never, as I say, as concerned about what had sold. I had to know that simply because my sellers wanted to know that, and I thought it was important to know that for appraisal purposes. But the bottom line really comes down to making sure your sellers know. And here's the takeaway on knowledge. Making sure your sellers know all the other homes out there in the market that are competing with theirs for the best buyers out there. That's number one, knowledge. And these are goals. So you want to make sure your sellers have that knowledge. Number two, disappointment. You want your sellers, if they're not realistic on price, and too many sellers are not realistic on price, they need to actually, when a disappointing thing happens, you don't want to create disappointment, but where a lot of listing agents fall down is they don't properly share disappointment. When a buyer goes through your listing and the buyer doesn't buy, whether it's your buyer or whether it's a buyer who's with another agent, when a buyer goes through your listing and that buyer doesn't buy, that should be a big deal. That's disappointment. That's somebody who looked, that's somebody who took the time to go over there. And in the right way, that needs to be relayed to your sellers. Every single showing, every single showing, listing agents should be relaying to their sellers the fact that the home was shown, because sometimes the sellers may not even know it if it's an open house or a Sunday or the sellers don't live there. And even if they do, you need to get back and you need to point out to them why the people are not making an offer, why these buyers are not making an offer if they're not making an offer. In other words, it is one showing where the buyer doesn't make an offer, in my view, is a disappointment, and not in a hugely like, oh my gosh, this is awful way, but just pointing out to the sellers that these people came through. I spoke with the agent that represented them. They're not going to be making an offer on our home, and here's why. And you just leave it at that. So you're really reporting the facts, but over time, imagine if you have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 showings on a property, and each time you call the seller and you share that disappointment, the fact that the buyers didn't make an offer, that is much more impactful to getting sellers to be realistic than if you just let the showings go. Of course, the sellers know perhaps it was shown and that nobody bought, but it's much more impactful if you actually speak with the buyer's agent and relay to the seller why they didn't make an offer. For example, a great example would be a home that we just listed for $885,000 in an area up here in North Scottsdale called DC Ranch. And I happen to be aware of this situation because it's one of the agents with our company. And the home is a lovely home on a beautiful greenbelt area. It's the perfect kids neighborhood. It's gated, great school districts, everything. Home's 3,700 square feet. And it was the former model, $65,000 pool, but it has 2.5 baths. So some buyers went through it this past weekend who would have been the perfect buyers for the home, but they have 3 kids, and they had promised the 2 kids had agreed to share bath, but the older daughter, they had agreed that when they bought a new home, she would have her own bath, but there aren't enough baths to do it because there's 1 bath servicing the side with 3 bedrooms, then there's the master bath, and then there's the guest bath. And so the bottom line was that information should be relayed to that seller that, you know, that these people, they just couldn't move forward because it has 2.5, not 3.5 baths. And the reason that's important to relay is because most of the homes in the community with 3 bedrooms would have 3.5 baths. And so that home is going to lose buyers because it's a kids neighborhood. It's going to lose buyers because it's missing a bath. Well, it's important that the seller recognize this and have a little disappointment and understand why. Why? Just so the seller understands the reality of the situation. So knowledge first, disappointment, having a string of disappointments, honest, truthful disappointments, so the seller recognizes what's happening. The third thing is anxiety. It's important that the sellers recognize, and this is huge, it's important that sellers recognize that every day that a home sits on the market, is, you know my line, time is acid to the price of a home. Time is acid to the price of a home. So it is critical that sellers recognize that every day that goes by is hurting the value of the sellers recognize it's hurting the value of their home. And so you create this anxiety by reminding sellers as the days and weeks go on that it is so important that we do whatever we can to get this home sold. So right now, what have we talked about? We've talked about making sure that your sellers have knowledge of the competition, that you, whenever there is a disappointing thing happen, like somebody showing it and them not making an offer, why they didn't make an offer, so that you continue to make sure the sellers are aware of the disappointment whenever it happens. And the third thing is anxiety, to constantly make sure sellers know that time hurts them. So 3 critical things. Now, 3 more critical things. And again, these are just kind of goals, and then I'll give you some techniques. First of all, you need to continue to maintain your enthusiasm. Even if you feel the price is out of whack, you still need to constantly be enthusiastic. Every call, enthusiastic. I'm working, I'm hard, I'm doing what I can. We're going to get this home sold. Constant enthusiasm. Sellers like that. They want to feel like every day that their listing agent is enthusiastic and is busting butt to try to get the job done. The second thing is confidence. Confidence kind of goes with enthusiasm, but you want to relay that. You don't necessarily say, I'm confident this home will sell at this price if it's overpriced, but you do constantly set forth that I'm going to sell this home. We're going to get this home sold. Just relax. We're going to get it done. Confidence. Constantly projecting this aura of confidence. That is critical. So enthusiasm, confidence, and then this is the biggie, because the first 3 are more what you want to ingrain in the seller: knowledge, disappointment, anxiety. Knowledge, disappointment, anxiety. These other 3 I'm giving you are the kind of traits you're portraying about yourself: enthusiasm, confidence, and the last one is work ethic. You constantly, when you're making the calls to the seller, you constantly want to be letting the seller know how hard you're working. Your showings, people you've spoken with, the things you're doing. You don't make a big deal about it. You just keep drip feeding that kind of stuff in so that the sellers know you really are working. And if you're not, bad on you. If you're not doing the work, bad on you. You should every single day with every one of your listings be waking up in the morning and thinking to yourself, what can I do to generate another showing, to take a showing that we had and to try to take that buyer and turn that into an offer? And if you don't have a list of your listings up somewhere where you can see them every day, on a piece of paper, I don't even think on your computer screen, I mean somewhere where you're seeing them every day and you're realizing that those are sellers who are sitting there every single day with houses unsold, dreams unfulfilled, unable to move on, whatever it is that they're selling for. Bottom line is, this needs to haunt you. This needs to be a big deal. And you need to have the work ethic. You need to be doing something every day to try to make that happen. And you need to convey that to the sellers. I think the worst thing that a seller could ever think about a listing agent is that listing agent is not busting butt every single day to get their home sold. So those are 6 things. So 3 things we want to constantly be instilling in the mind of the sellers to make the sellers understand the true picture. This is not creating an illusion. This is just not letting the sellers live in an illusion. I want to say that again. This is not creating an illusion. This is simply not letting your sellers live in an illusion, because if they do, they're the ones that are getting hurt. You may cash a commission check, if your home sells 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road, but guess what? Your sellers are probably taking less than they would have if it had sold earlier. So the bottom line is, it is so important that you make sure your sellers understand the real reality out there. So how do you do that? Constantly knowledge of the competition, knowledge of what's out there, people that are reducing their prices. What are other buyers looking for in your seller's prices? What are they looking at? What are they seeing? And how is it better? How are these homes better? Next, share the disappointment. And third, make sure your sellers have some anxiety, understanding that time on the market is hurtful to the price of their home. You're constantly projecting enthusiasm, projecting confidence, because you should, that's what you should be doing, and that you are pointing out to your sellers how hard you're working every single day to get that home sold. So that's kind of the overview. Those are 6 things. So here's a few things that I think are really, really important in terms of now, let's say, some actual techniques. All the 6 words, the 6 concepts, the 6 things I just pointed out to you, you can do in multiple ways. That's why I wanted to start this webinar with that. Those things are so important. Knowledge, disappointment, anxiety, constantly be reinforcing those in a valid way to your sellers so they don't live in an illusion. You projecting enthusiasm, confidence, and the work ethic. So you can do that in multiple ways. Now, here are some specific techniques. First of all, you want to make sure that when you list a home, you prepare your sellers for an early offer. Sometimes sellers feel like if they get an offer right away, other than in crazy hot markets, maybe like Denver in the mid to lower price range, you know, in crazy hot markets where every seller knows they're going to get multiple offers right away. But in, you know, more normalized situations where offers don't come in right away, multiple offers, which is most of the time, you don't have a flood of offers on most homes you list immediately. So you want to prepare your sellers in case an offer does come in right away, that this could well be their best offer. And you say, I'm not saying it'll happen, going to do my best to make it happen. That's what our whole pre-marketing regimen that I teach is all about: building anticipation, building excitement, getting buyers in a higher price frame of mind. This is critical stuff. It's critical stuff, but you want to make sure your sellers don't cavalierly look at that first offer and say, well, I'm sure, they almost think to themselves they underpriced their home. So it is, in my view, as part of your listing presentation, once you've got the listing, to make sure the sellers understand that oftentimes the first offers are the best offers. And so I just say to sellers, offer comes in early on, we're going to do our best to make that happen, no guarantees. But if it does, these could well be the best buyers. The home is new and fresh on the market. Buyers love that. Buyers are more serious. Buyers are willing to pay a higher price. So I say to sellers, all I'm saying to you is, if that happens, if we're fortunate enough in the first week or the first couple, 3 weeks to get a good offer from a good buyer on this home, this is where we need to double down and try to make it happen, to try to make sure we end up with a sale. So that's number 1. Number 2, you want to make sure that you emphasize, as I've said, the downside of days on the market constantly. I talked about that earlier. It's critical to do. And to also reference the competition out there. Constantly be talking to sellers about the competition, new homes that come on the market. If there's any new homes that come on the market that are competition for your listing, you want to be sure that your sellers know about that. I can't believe the number of listing agents that don't do that. They actually have their sellers not being knowledgeable about new homes that are on the market that are in competition to them. So constantly be watching that and constantly be sharing that information. Next, let's say now you get an offer. So what you've done is, throughout the course of the listing, you've prepared. Hey, Taylor, you want to come in for a second?
Yeah.
Hey, okay. So we're going to take a 1-minute break here. So Taylor, come on, you can want to see, get on the screen here. Okay. So yeah. Taylor, are you 12 now?
Yeah, I'm 12. Yeah.
Taylor is 12. And Taylor and I first met back when he left the door hanger. You can see, you can get on the screen. Yeah. Okay. So I'll get over. So Taylor and I first met when Taylor left a door hanger on our door at our old house, right? Mm-hmm. And he had a dog walking service actually called Taylor's Dog walking service. Mm-hmm. And so I gave Taylor a call, and Taylor handled me incredibly professionally. He said, well, how many days do you want the dogs walked and all that? And I said, every day. You're like, this works, right?
Yeah, this works.
So how long ago was that?
About a year ago.
So Taylor, I will tell you, if you live in the Scottsdale area, Taylor is the best. Then we've got dogs now. Our dogs are all walk. Taylor is the best dog walker on the face of the earth. Dependable, on time, texting first. Dogs absolutely love him. You should see the dogs just about jump out of their skin when he comes over. And Taylor, because of his work ethic, his enthusiasm, his dependability, you build a business now, you have a fair number of clients, right?
Yeah, I got like lots of clients.
Lots of clients. In fact,
every day, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, turn this into, you could make this like into a mega national business, right?
Yeah.
I think we should franchise Taylor's dog walking service, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you know what a franchise is?
Making it big, huh?
That is exactly what it is, making it big. Taylor, thank you. You are awesome.
Welcome.
And we'll see you tomorrow morning. Walk the dogs. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me tell you, if I could, when Taylor is 18 years old, I'm going to start working on it at about 16. And at about 18, Taylor is going to be joining us in real estate. I am telling you, hands down, Taylor is totally awesome. He is. You're looking for a great team member on your real estate team. When Taylor is of age to have a real estate license, he's your guy. Okay, back to the webinar. Sorry, I told Taylor when I saw him earlier today that I would introduce him on the webinar. If you are in the Scottsdale area and you're looking for an amazing dog walking service, we live up in a community called Silverleaf. And so this whole DC Ranch, North Scottsdale area, just email me. You can email me directly, greg@realestatemaverics.com, and I will connect you with Taylor. Okay, so now let's say that you've done everything that I've talked about and you receive an offer on the property. So one of the things that I think is another takeaway that is critically important is to, in the minds of your sellers, humanize your buyers. Humanize your buyers. This is really, really, really important. Most sellers simply see a contract. They see, really, their vision is house dealers, because you know as well as I do, the contracts never come in, and offers on homes never come in, well, rarely come in as high as the sellers want. So the sellers are disappointed and they see the buyers as house dealers. So one of the things that I think makes a huge difference in presenting an offer is to give the sellers some background on the buyers. Talk to them. If they're your buyers, great, then you know that. If they're not your buyers, then talk to the buyer's agent and just say, I want to humanize your buyers. I want to share, why are they buying? What's their family like? How many kids? The whole thing. Humanize the, this is a huge deal when you're presenting an offer, to know about the buyers. So few listing agents do this. I don't understand why. So because the sellers are always curious, who are these people? And you humanize them, how much they like the home, where they come from, why they're buying, et cetera, et cetera. And then also, I think it's really important, another takeaway with respect to presenting the buyers to the sellers, is to understand from the buyer's agent if there are any other homes that are in competition, any other homes that the buyers are considering. Because I think it's important to point that out to the sellers, because most of the time, buyers will have more than one choice, and this is the one they're making the offer on now. But if it doesn't work, they're going to buy a home. There's going to be a second choice. And so the sellers, I think, need to be aware of what that is. So humanize your buyers, incredibly important. Now, let's say that you do receive an offer and you're going to go over to your sellers to present the offer in person. I know in this new world, everybody's, it's all about phone calls, text messages, DocuSign, all that stuff. I got to tell you, you can do whatever you want, but you are never going to convince me that when you have an offer on a property, that you shouldn't be there at the table in front of your sellers. Number one, you're going to be much more effective. Number two, they can sign off right there. And number three, you owe them that. So I think most of you still do that, but I do know some agents that have gotten in the habit of presenting offers over the phone and then just sending the sellers a DocuSign to sign with a counteroffer or whatever. And I not only not recommend it, I'm just telling you, unless your sellers are hundreds of miles away, you need to be in front of your sellers when you present the offer. So my suggestion is you never call your sellers. You're going to like this. You're going to like this. You never call your sellers to make the appointment to present the offer. So you never call your sellers to make the appointment to present the offer. So I know you're thinking, why? Why would I never call my sellers to tell them I'm coming over, see what time I can come over and present the offer? Because what's the first thing they're going to ask you if you do? What's the first, you know what it is? They're going to ask you, what's the price? And what are you going to say? I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to keep it a secret till I get over there. So you don't want to have to present the offer over the phone. You want to be able to do it in person. And particularly, here's what will happen. If you tell the sellers the price before you go over to present the offer, then they're going to talk about it, think about it, and they're going to get entrenched in concrete. They're going to decide what their counteroffer is going to be. And when you get over there, you're none of these things that you know that you learn how to do, where you, and this last thing in particular that I'm going to teach you in terms of getting sellers to take the offers they should or counteroffer where they should, they're not going to be as effective. So you want to have somebody else call, some other agent in your office, if you have an assistant, whatever, and just say, hey, great news, Greg, wanted to let you know that and don't do it way ahead of time. If you get an offer, it comes in the morning, and you're not going to see the sellers till that evening, then I would wait until afternoon to have the call made, where somebody from your office calls and says, hey, Greg wanted me to call you. He's out on an appointment, but he has a contract on your home. And I'd call it a contract, not an offer. I would call it a contract. He has a contract on your home, and he was wondering if he could come by like at 5 o'clock before dinner. And then whatever it is, just, tell whomever is making the call what your time windows are and get it done. And of course, they're going to say, well, do you know how much it is and how much it is? No, Greg didn't tell me. And don't have somebody have to lie. Don't tell him what it is. Just say, I'm sorry, he didn't. He just was all excited. And that's important. Greg was all excited when he called, and he says he's excited to get over there, looks forward to seeing you. There's a contract on your home. And then, you set the time, they let you know the time, and then you go over. And that way you get to do it fresh and in person without having to spill the beans over the phone. Okay, so you have somebody else call, and then I taught this once before in a webinar. This is, so what are all the things that we've learned to do? We're going to do what? Make sure during the course, first of all, at the time we list the property, we're going to make sure the sellers are knowledgeable about the competition. What are they in competition with? Make sure the sellers are knowledgeable that time is hurtful to the price of their home. We're going to make sure the sellers are knowledgeable that sometimes the first offers are the best offers. Okay, so stay with me on this. So those sellers are going to be knowledgeable about these three things. Sometimes, so you've got that. That's really, really important. So we're also then, once we get the listing going, we're going to make sure that every time we have a disappointment, every time we have a showing on the property that doesn't mature into an offer, that the sellers understand that. So they have some disappointment, and we're going to constantly be pointing out to the sellers the importance of getting this home sold, that you're doing everything you can. The fact, a lot of agents, I think, are hesitant to talk to sellers about how important it is to get homes sold quickly, because they're afraid that will reflect negatively on them, that they're not getting the job done. Actually not, if you do it right. If the sellers recognize you're doing everything you can to get the home sold, if you're doing the other three things I talked about, you have enthusiasm, confidence, and you constantly are showing the sellers how hard you're working, then the sellers won't be disappointed in what you're doing. They'll be disappointed that the home isn't selling, and it'll make them more realistic on price. Does that make sense? And so this disappointment and this anxiety, the idea that your home isn't selling right away, it's not going to hurt you. It's going to help you if you do it right. And doing it right means you're constantly enthusiastic, you're constantly portraying confidence, and you're constantly portraying how hard you're working. Okay, so you prepare them for the early offer, you do all this stuff, and then you're constantly, during the course of the listing, letting the sellers know every time the home is shown and what the competition is, any new competition that comes on the market, when the home's shown, and why the buyers aren't making an offer. So you're constantly doing what? Getting them to be more realistic, to see the real picture, to see how hard it is. And so then when the time comes that you do have an offer on the property, you have somebody else call to make an appointment, you go over, and then you present. I like to present offers from what I call, sellers want to know the price right away, but I like to present all the other stuff, all the good things in the offer. If it's a already pre-qualified buyer, cash offer, whatever it is, lots of good things. Go through them quickly, because the sellers just want to know the price. You can't string it out too long or they get impatient. But I present offers from the bottom up, and I humanize the buyers. So you want to humanize the buyers, and you say to the sellers, before I actually get into the contract, would you mind 5 minutes if I just tell you about the buyers? And if they say, well, what's the price? What's the price? Go ahead and tell them. But it'd be so much better to humanize the buyers before you talk to the sellers about price. Because once you tell them the price, that's all they're going to think about, and they're probably going to be disappointed. And the humanization of the buyers is not going to work out as effectively. So you try to humanize the buyers first, so they don't appear to be house stealers. You present the contract from the bottom up, that is all the good things about it. And then if you can, make the price last. Okay, make the price last. Then Here, once you've gotten down to it and you've had the discussions with the seller, and the sellers don't want to take an offer they should. So you've got an offer that they should, and maybe this offer is a product of an offer, a counter offer back to the buyers, and maybe it's a counter offer by the buyers back to the sellers. So maybe it's that. But now this is where the rubber meets the road. You've gotten it to the, you've done all these things, and I hope you can see how doing the things I just said, all these things are going to get your sellers in a better frame of mind to accept the offers they should. So you've done the framework, you've gotten your sellers in this better frame of mind, and now you want to make sure they do it. You want to make sure that if they're not reaching in down and sign, what can you say that is going to get them to do it? And here is the most powerful, I hesitate to even call it a closing technique, because it's really just a way to get the sellers, in my view, to see things the way they are. So I say to my sellers, when I'm down to it, I've done all these other things, and we've talked about the offer, and let's say we've got a $435,000 home, and we've got an offer for $405,000, and the sellers want $415,000. They want another $10,000. They'd like to get another $15,000, but they're just no way are they saying. They're saying, you know, Greg, $415,000 is our bottom line. That's it. That's our bottom line. So here's what you do. If you know that 405 is the right thing to do, and you know you're really confident the buyers just aren't going to come up another nickel, because if you think you can get the buyers up, try it. And then if you can't, you can always circle back around and get the buyers to go ahead and buy it. I know once you've counteroffered, that officially gets rid of the offer that's made, but that's not the point. If you feel that it's worth taking a shot at getting the buyers up, do it. But once you're at the point that you really believe this is the most the buyers are going to go, this is it, this is their bottom line, they're going to move on, then, and say we've got a $435,000 listing, sellers want $415,000, bottom line, you've got $405,000 offer. Here's what you do. You get the sellers to change their perspective. You get the sellers to see this offer in the framework of them being a buyer. What do I mean by that? I would say to you, if you were my seller, the following. I would say, I'll use you, Terry. I know you're listening, so Terry Smith. So I would say, Terry, I said, here's what I would say, here's what I want you to do. If you'll just sit back before we make a final decision, before we counteroffer at this 415, because I don't think the buyers will go there. I think we're going to lose them. I think this is it. And before we make the final decision, can I ask you to just do this, Terry? Will you put yourself in the role of a buyer as opposed to a seller? And here's what I mean by that. Right now, if you reach down, Terry, and sign this contract, your home is sold at $405,000. Now, it's been on the market at $435,000 for 52 days. We've not had one single offer, or maybe we've had offers, but none of them were this good. The market has told us clearly that 435 isn't going to get it, that it's not going to sell at 425, 430, 435. The market is telling us that, and days on the market are ticking. Every day that goes by, your home is becoming less valuable, because buyers look at days on the market, presume that if a home sits on the market, particularly in a hot market like what we're in, that it must be overpriced. So here's what I want to ask you. Think of this in terms of you being a buyer. If you reach down and sign this contract, Terry, then you have this home sold at $405,000. If you don't reach down and sign this, effectively, you've just bought your home back for $405,000 because it's sold. These are qualified buyers. It's gone. So if you don't do it and they move on, you've effectively bought your home back for $405,000. Now, let me ask you a question. Knowing that it's been on the market 52 days, knowing that we've not seen anything, any offer this high, knowing the time, every day, every week that goes by is hurting the value of the home, let me ask you, Terry, as a buyer, if you had $405,000 in your pocket as a buyer, knowing all the different investments, all the range of investments out there, things you could buy, even the properties. You could buy stocks, bonds, all kinds of stuff, to make, but as purely money, because this isn't about emotion anymore. You're selling this home. This isn't about all the years you've enjoyed and lived in this home. This isn't about anything except for the money. I want to ask you, of all the available investments, of all the homes that can be bought out there, would you take your $405,000 and knowing that you needed to get it out in the next few weeks or month or two, knowing that this home had never had a contract that high, would you buy this house for $405,000? Because if you don't sign this contract, that's what you've done. You bought this house for $405,000. And that would, you gotta see, you'd never do that. If you had $405,000, you would not buy this house in the hope that you could make $5,000 or $10,000 on that, knowing that it's sat and knowing that there's never been an offer that high and knowing the time on the market is hurting the price every single day. You wouldn't do it. And yet that's what you'll be doing if you turn this down. That if you have worked the deal, if you've worked the deal and it's really clear to you and the sellers that this is the furthest the buyers will go. You don't use this unless you've really pushed the deal. Your job is to get the sellers the highest price you can. So you push it as hard as you can. And once you're at a point where you know those buyers are going to walk away, the sellers, it's really fish or cut bait, then that is the most powerful close I've ever used, I've ever heard. And why? Because it's true. The sellers don't see it in the right perspective. They're making an emotional decision, not a money decision. And the decision should be purely a money investment decision. Has nothing to do with what they want out of their home, has nothing to do with what they have in their home, their improvements, has nothing to do with all the wonderful times they've had in their home. That stuff needs to be put aside. It doesn't matter. If the market has told us that we're not seeing anything over 405, and these buyers are good buyers willing to pay the 405, and it's a fish or cut bait deal, the odds are truly that the home will sell for less, not sell for more, if it's had a little bit of time on the market. And the bottom line is the seller should take that deal, and it's your responsibility. In my view, it's your responsibility to get them to see the light, to get them to be realistic and to reach down and sign on the dotted line. And that's when you use that close. When you've done all these other things, you've worked the deal as hard as you can, you truly believe this is a deal they should take, you make sure they understand that if they don't sign that deal, they have just bought their home back for $405,000 in the hope that they can sell it and make a few $1,000, knowing that nobody else has made an offer on it at that amount, and knowing that it's going down in price every single day. Well, I hope that helped. That's the way I was, we'll say, quite successul at getting homes sold. Rarely had a home expire. Low price range, mid price range, and then when I got into the luxury price range, that's what I just gave you here in, I don't know, 35, 40 minutes. That is 35, 40 years of figuring out how to get sellers to be realistic and how to get sellers to take the offers they should. Well, Mavericks, I'm going to end this webinar the way I always do, and that is, I salute the Maverick in you. Bye-bye.